What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, it's Eugene and I talking about an idea that I think might be useful to you guys if you're busy, productive people like me and like Eugene. It's something that I think is super important. It's something where, you know, I really had to put this practice into the mix back about 4 years ago now, and it's been something that's been kind of a constant, and I always kind of go back to it whenever I feel like I'm losing myself, or like getting to this point of where I feel frantic or unsettled or ungrounded. I always kind of go back to this idea, and it seems to help kind of bring me back into a good place mentally and physically, and with my training and with my work, everything. So hopefully this is useful to you guys. Big thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web. You guys, obviously, if you've listened to the podcast more than once, you've heard about them. But again, I'm a big fan of their products. Eugene's a big fan of their products. We use them. I still use mine every night. You use yours?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do tincture in the morning, and then I do sleep gummies at night.
You do it in the morning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't get like sleepy or anything?
No.
Man, it relaxes me too much.
I think it does good. I think because I'm a little amped up.
Yeah, you're a little like,
up,
yeah. So you're like a little bit more amped up than me. If I take it, I feel like I'm just so friggin' mellow. Which, I mean, so maybe some of you guys that are listening, you're like, if you feel like you want to be a little more mellow, it would be useful for you.
Just try it. Yeah, try it like maybe on a Saturday when you don't have a lot going on. I wouldn't just like be like, hey, I got to go to work. I'm going to take a bunch of CBD.
Yeah.
But I've gotten it to where like I just know, like I feel good when I do it. I don't really, like if I go train super early, I don't take it. I take it after training. Yeah, I kind of want to be a little amped up.
Yeah, you want to have that energy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember taking it like earlier in the day, and then going to the grocery store. And I remember I felt like I was like super like zenned out, like where I was just sitting at the grocery store staring at people, like when I was getting ready to check.
Staring at people.
Well, getting ready to check out, you know, and I'm just kind of there. Although I kind of do that anyway. Like when you go to the grocery store and you see people, and everybody's like, which we talk about on the podcast. Everybody's like they're in the line, and so they can't sit in the line, so they start fiddling with their phones and stuff. I just like to sit there, and I find it an interesting experiment. Like, all right, so this is many people's in line. How many people can't stop checking their phones? Yeah. How many people do?
I like to go to when Mish and I would go to dinner. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see how many people are on their phones.
Oh, it's the worst, dude.
I would judge them. I'd be like,
dude, it's the worst.
No, I'm kidding.
Like, I mean, so it sucks. It's like, you know, like I mean, Jess and I sometimes like we'll pull out the phone because we'll like look at something together. Yeah. But like, I put my phone in the damn thing. A lot of times I'll leave it at home, because I just don't want to be around it. Like, we're having dinner. Like, I don't want to be on my phone. I have this chance to be with this person for an hour or whatever, and we're eating. I don't want to be looking at my phone. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to message someone on the internet? So, anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about CBD right now. But yeah, guys, if you haven't tried their products out, I encourage everyone to that can take CBD. Again, obviously, check in your area to make sure it's legal and all that stuff. And then depending on if you get tested or not, look on their website to get more clarification as to whether or not you would, be subject to a test that could potentially say like pop you for something. But that said, it's great products. And again, I encourage everyone to try it out for a month, where you basically pick one of the products, just try it, see what it does for you. If it does nothing, then heck, you know, you figured it out, does nothing. But if you're listening, you're like, man, I kind of like to try it. Yeah. Then, you know, just go over to their website at charlottesweb.com. You can use a promo code Chewjitsu, save 15% on the order. Pick out the tincture, pick out the gummies, whichever one you want. I'd probably start with the tincture, just because it's like straight up, just like CBD. Try the tincture, see how you feel on it, and do it for a month. Use it like once a day, like, you know, maybe start off at nighttime like a lot of us do, because it seems to help promote healthy sleep patterns. Yeah. Try it out at nighttime, see how you feel. If you like it, like half of my gym has. I was talking to the guys, like I feel like half the gym's hooked on this stuff now. Try it out and see if you like it. If you do, great. Then you keep ordering it and you get the benefits from it. If you don't like it, then you found out that it wasn't for you, and you can move on, and you don't have to deal with that gnawing curiosity that says, man, what if it could be help? What if it could help me out?
Even just in one aspect, like maybe if it's just sleep.
And big thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. If you guys are listening to this on the YouTube, you know, he's got this cool hat, and I'm always so like, it's a cool looking hat. It's brown and it's simple, and I wish that I could wear it, but like I can't, because if you look at it, if you're watching the video right now, which if you guys haven't seen the videos, you can go to youtube.com. You can go to YouTube, and you can go to the Jiu-Jitsu YouTube channel, and you can subscribe, and you can see me doing this. But I have a tall head. So like the top of my head is very tall. And so when I put the hat on, it's like I've got like 2 inches of clearance above my ears. It's like my earlobes are down on my shoulders.
I told you need to get a top hat, like an Abraham Lincoln hat.
4 years ago. But it doesn't work. I don't have a good hat. It's a good thing I got hair.
It is,
because if I did not have hair and I had my big giant noggin, it would not be good.
My wife makes fun of my head because she says my head's really flat. Mm-hmm. Like I don't. Anyway,
yeah.
So she makes fun of me for that. So I should probably wear hats maybe more often.
But if you guys have a good hat, then you can get if you've got a good head for a hat, you can go over to epicrollbjj.com, and he's got more than hats. He's got a hat, of course, but he's got training gear, he's got gis, he's got t-shirts. I like his t-shirts. Every time I wear one of his t-shirts on the YouTube channel, I get comments. One of the videos that I released the other day had the neon belly.
Oh yeah, neon belly.
Yeah, where it says neon as in NEON hyphen belly, BELLY, and it had like multiple different sort of neon looking colors, and everybody was like, oh, I love that shirt. So again, I like his shirts because they're simple, they're cool, and again, it's one of those things where if you have neon belly, it's interesting because no one else is going to know. They're going to be like, what? Neon belly? What does that even mean? Is that like a band or something? Like, they're not going to know. Yeah. But like some jiu-jitsu person be like, if they say it neon, but oh, you do jiu-jitsu, or even like when I had the triangle choke shirt, and I think he's got a Kimura one now. I need to get that one. I want to take it to Kroger, take it for a run. I like going to the grocery store and just like, again, these little social experiments. I like watching people's eyes like look at my shirt and then cock their head like, what?
Half of your day is walking around staring at people, seeing if they give you weird reactions.
Just staring. Well, I did that years ago. Remember the mustaches? So back in the day, when I could finally grow like a full beard, which was in my like late 20s, I would grow a beard, and then in October, I basically did this for like 2 or 3 years. I would ask everybody like to give me like an idea for a mustache or for like a mustache or beard or whatever.
Yeah.
And they would give their submissions, and I would trim it up into a ridiculous mustache or beard, and then I would dress really nice. Like I remember like one year I had this big giant mustache and chops, and I mean I looked so ridiculous, and I'd put on a suit, and I was like walking around all day in a suit, and it was just the most ridiculous thing just to see what people thought, in like the different parts of town. Like, the rougher part of town, they were like, that hair looks good, man. I like that mustache. And then you go like to go into like the more affluent part of town where the big old mutton chops, and they're looking at me and they're pulling their kids a little closer.
That's right.
Which has nothing to do with Matt's products, but again, they are really nice stuff. If you've watched my videos on my channel, like rolling, if you ever see Epic Roll on the shorts, or if you ever see me wear some kind of cool t-shirt, it's probably Matt's stuff. So you can check his stuff out at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. You can get on there and you can get the year's worth of content that we built up for, to me, it's next to nothing. And then on top of that, if you'd like to, there's a second tier where you can jump in on some live Zoom meetups with me and some of the people that I have, where we get together. I kind of talk about some different ideas, do a little Q&A with you guys. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. And if you would like to get my almost daily email, you can go to jiu-jitsu.net. I say almost daily because I don't do it every day, usually Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekends. But you can go to jiu-jitsu.net and just look up there. It says free ebook. I'll give you the resource, it's 2 free resources, 2 ebooks, and then you'll be able to join the Chew crew. And I'll plug you in there. And then if you, for some reason, you're like, you know what, Chewy, I don't want these stupid emails anymore, you can always unsubscribe and I'll stop sending them. But otherwise, you can get them and join I think it's like 40,000 people right now. Join them and join in and
it's a lot of
get the emails.
People.
Yeah. So with that said, guys, hope you enjoy the podcast. I got interested in breathing like back in 2000 and I guess it was 2013.
Yeah.
Because I remember getting a panic attack. Never had one before. Where basically I felt a heart palpitation.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this spiral in my mind went, and all of a sudden, I was having like a full-on panic attack where I couldn't focus or concentrate, and I just felt like I was going to die.
Did you feel like you couldn't breathe?
Yeah, I felt like I couldn't breathe, but I could.
You're suffocating, but you can't.
But I could breathe. I was like, this is so weird, and I was thinking like, what is going on? And there was about a few weeks where like I would just for whatever reason, caffeine was a big trigger, and I would get a panic attack. And so I laid off the caffeine a bit, and then started to look into breathing, because I was just looking at different stuff for dealing with the panic attack that got into breathing. And then I started just getting interested in breathing. And that's where a lot of the different breathing exercises that I do came from, because I started researching it. And it's interesting to see what breathing does and the way that you can change your physiological state by breathing in a particular way. So for instance, like if you breathe, like for instance, if you can breathe really slowly to chill yourself out, like I can, like when I do my HRV test and stuff like that in the morning and everything else, I can see, or even when I'm meditating, I can see my heart rate drop dramatically. It'll drop into like the 40s, my resting heart rate. And then there are other times like where doing different stuff where, you'll breathe really fast, almost like locomotion, like,
yeah.
And then if you do that kind of breath, like, I mean, you do that
charging breath,
do that for 10 minutes, bro. You will be like amped up and like ready to do something, right? Like if you like and get going, dude, 10 minutes, you'll be like ready to friggin' bust through a wall.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's interesting. And we talked to Brian McKenzie about that, where, again, they talk about, like, he was talking about the idea of where, your respiratory system's catching up to the muscular system, right? Where you get that, oh, I'm good now. Right. Yeah. And so that's something where even before matches, I'll do some of that charging breath beforehand to get myself like opened up and get those. And when you breathe through your nose too, it's the same thing where by the end of it, you'll be able to breathe better. Like sometimes people will, say like, I can't breathe because they're stopped up. Right. But if you keep doing it, eventually things seem to open up unless you have some sort of like weird blockage.
That's what that book, Breath, I believe it's James Nestor, but the book is called Breath. He was talking about like, basically if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
So like if you're not breathing through your nose, like your cavities, your nasal cavities and stuff starts to close down, and you get less efficient. And so they even said like, he had like a 5-year-old, like, or there was a study with this 5-year-old that had like ADHD and all this crazy stuff, and they had them breathe, like taught them how to just nasal breathe only, and they didn't have ADHD anymore.
Well, I mean, to me it makes sense, because like just anyone, like the next time you're just sitting there doing something, even if like right now if you're driving, just do this, like. Go like just take a second, like so you're gonna breathe through your nose.
Yeah.
And when you breathe through your nose, make the inhale slow and make the exhale slower. So
yep. That's beautiful.
And tell me how you feel afterwards.
No, you feel better.
You chill out.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times what's really interesting, and this is one of the reasons why I meditate in the morning. I was actually talking to my business partner, Joe, about it, because if I get up in the morning and I immediately start fuddling around on my phone, it screws me up. So I put my phone in airplane mode and I'll go meditate and I'll get my work done and stuff. And as long as like I do those things, like it keeps me present and I'm more relaxed. Whereas if I'm fiddling around with my phone and everything else, it just changes my mindset and everything else. And it's sometimes like if I'm not careful, I feel like I almost get like ADD, where I'm bouncing around all over the place, but I'm not focused. And so like a lot of times that's where I like take my phone, put it in airplane mode, I'll chuck it across the room into the couch, and so it's not around me. And then I get to work and do my writing or my reading or even self-reflection. I mean, that's just like something where we look at it so bad just to be like, have a little time to yourself, and that's kind of where this, today's podcast, what it's about, is the idea of creating some space for yourself, a little bit of solitude. I was thinking about it. I know it sounds random, but if you've, did you ever watch did you ever like read Superman comics, or did you ever see like the shows or anything like that? Yeah. So Superman had a Fortress of Solitude. Right. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that that's probably an important thing to have. Right. It doesn't necessarily, your fortress could be a metaphorical fortress, right? It could be something where you put your headphones in and you do something, and that's your fortress for that time period, right? That's your shield against the outside world. But as I've gotten older and had more responsibilities, I've realized it's a really important thing to have in your life. And I think the more I've looked around the last year and a half now, or year, I guess, it'll be almost in about a month for us here in Kentucky. It'll be the 1 year anniversary for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And so
We've been flattening that curve for a while.
I know, right? It was about that 2 weeks.
I think we just don't have enough masks on in succession.
We need 20. But again, I think it's a really important thing to like have some space to yourself, because you look at people who, even now, like where I was talking to a guy who works from home and he hates it. Because he's like, I want to get away from the normals. I want to be in the office. I want to be away for a little bit.
Right. You know, have a different environment.
Yeah. And then some people I've heard where where they work from home and they didn't mind the working at home part, but they wanted to just get out, away from everything. So they'd get out of their car and just drive around a little bit just to get away, And, and I think that that's an important thing, is to have some solitude from time to time, because for me, at least, I find that I get recharged from it physically and emotionally, and mentally. I get recharged from that time away from everything, because my most of my profession, right, is giving my energy away, right? I realized this a couple of years ago, where about 4 years ago now, where I realized I was giving everything away and I wasn't saving anything for me. So I was, teaching classes, I was doing videos, and then I was answering phone calls, text messages, DMs, YouTube comments. I was having meetings with different business partners and everything. I was just doing all this stuff all the time. And by the end of it, man, I was just, I felt like I just didn't have anything for me, right? And this is why now I sort of make it a point, like where with my phone, I take that sucker, put it in airplane mode, and I chuck it across the room so that it doesn't bother me. I go on solo vacations. Sometimes by myself, just to be away from everything. It's while throughout the week, I'll plan some specific time for myself to do whatever it is that I feel like I want to do, which could be anything from just laying around on the couch reading, to going to a bookstore, to going to a really long walk, to whatever. And even like lifting weights. Lifting weights is kind of is something like that too, where it's meditative, where I put my headphones in. I'm usually listening to an audiobook or something like that. And then I just get to the weights and and essentially I'm not I might be surrounded by people, but I'm by myself, where I'm lifting weights and stuff. And so this idea, I think it's really important. I think if you're not making some time for solitude, for your own self, I think that it's something you should definitely include. And I think it's something that's really useful. And I think it's something that we get away from because we get so hung up with being productive and all this stuff. And I was reading, I've been diving into some of Nietzsche's work recently, and even he was talking about this back in the 1800s, where he was saying people are so, basically the little passage was like, people are so focused on this production idea, being productive, right, that they even they're eating their food with a watch in their hand, right, like just constantly I gotta go. And for me though, I feel like a lot of times some of my best ideas, when I get my best goals set, right, like all that stuff, that typically happens when I'm in more of a relaxed state. And even kind of going back to your breath, I mean, you can think about the way that you think when you're in a more relaxed state versus the way you think about when you're in a really heightened, stressed out state. I mean, even think about jiu-jitsu. Think about how creative you can be when you're rolling and you're in that optimal state where you're excited, but at the same time you're not stressed out. And then think about the way you think about jiu-jitsu, or the way that you perform when you go to a competition. You might perform well, but you're not in a very creative place. You're in a very, this is what I'm using and I got to go, right? Whereas when you're in the gym most of the time, that's where you kind of do your playing around, and you can get really creative with the stuff. And they've done studies with people's, psychological studies, where they say that there's this sort of happy middle ground of arousal, where you're not overly aroused to the point where you're stressed out or whatever, think competition where people brain fart, but you're not ready to go to sleep either. You're somewhere in the middle, and that's kind of that flow state we talk about. That's the place you want to be at. And you can even think about how breathing can facilitate that, right? I mean, before I do any sort of work, whether it's writing or it's videos or whatever, I try to do some sort of meditation beforehand. And this meditation could take the form of some deep breathing and stuff, but it also could take the form of different movements and things like that. But I would just encourage anybody listening who's just kind of who follows me and maybe thinks I have a couple ideas worth sharing. make some time for yourself. Because I think everybody out there, especially if you're one of those people that's trying to be Superman or Superwoman, right? You're trying to be productive. You're trying to do this. Well, Superman had a fortress of solitude. You should too. You should have a place for yourself. You should have some time for yourself each and every day or week or whatever you can squeeze in there. This might involve you getting up a little earlier. This might involve staying up a little bit later. This might involve you having to really like carve out some time and be mindful of your usage on like the friggin' dopamine distributor that you call a smartphone.
Yep.
But make some time for yourself. I think it's so important. I think it's something that's undervalued in a society that only sort of at this point values you being productive.
Yeah.
Right.
I think like in the mornings, having a good morning routine, because I'll get up and I'll start just trying to figure out what I need to do. Like what do I need to get done today? And I just start diving into one thing, and they'll dive into another, and they'll dive into another. And what I do better is if like I take some time to just like chill out, breathe a little bit, journal a little bit, which I started doing, which I've had a hard time. I've done this journaling thing. Like I started, stopped numerous times. So I ended up I was like, all right, I'm going to get this thing it's called a mind journal.
Okay.
And so it's a little expensive, but like, I was like, all right, I'll see I was just researching journals because I feel like having just a blank page sometimes is a little bit difficult because I'm like, I don't know what to write sometimes. You can do different things. If you're experienced and if you've done it for a while,
write whatever.
You can write whatever. Ooh. So this one has like little prompts and stuff, and it may be like super short. Like I might just have to write like 3 things I'm grateful for, or this or that. But I've started making that more of a habit, and I feel like I can at least write some things down on the page and have a little more focus.
Do you sit down the night before and plan out like what you plan to do the next day?
No.
That's something that's helpful to me.
That's kind of cool. I've never thought of that.
Yeah, so like I'll sit down because I've got a million different directions I can go in every day, and so for me it's the same thing. If I just start working in the morning, who knows where I'm going to go?
I'm like that, man.
15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. Someone give me a call, text, whatever. Oh shit, let me help him out.
Yep.
So typically, what I do is I'll actually mark down like what are the big things I want to work on tomorrow, and I typically I've gotten to this point where I make days almost like themed. Where it's like, all right, this is my podcast day. This is my like Jiu-Jitsu podcast day. This is my my screw off day where I'm not doing anything. This is my like heavy training day. This is going to be my video day. Like I try to give days their place.
Yeah.
Where basically when I wake up, from the moment I wake up in the morning, that's what I'm focused on, that thing that I'm doing that day, and that's been kind of helpful to me because, and again, you don't have to do the theme part, but even just having like there's some magic in. Like I swear, like sometimes like I'll mark down what it is I plan to do the next day, and I'll even have a question to myself, and I'll say, all right, like I need to figure out a solution to this or whatever it might be, and I'll go to sleep, and it's like I'll wake up at like 7 a.m, boom, I've got some answers. It's like weird how that works, right? Subconscious gets to work.
Yeah.
And so I like to have like at least a game plan of how to get things started the next day and what I need to get done. That's usually been pretty helpful to me. But like, and again, you could include that in as in like time to yourself, reflecting on how'd your day go, and then what do we want to make happen tomorrow?
Yeah. So like, as far as solitude goes, say somebody's like, just they feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, how much time do you recommend just to start? Like, if you feel like you have a bunch of shit going on, like I gotta get some kind of focus, get some kind of day in order. Like, what do you think? How much time? Because it almost feels like this to me. It's like I've got all these things to do.
Yeah.
I don't have time to sit here and like think about or breathe for 10 minutes.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
It's what you think.
It's what you think.
Yeah.
Your logical brain's like, oh, I don't have time for this. I need to get to moving. So what do you think? Like overcoming that self-talk, overcoming that resistance. What do you recommend somebody does just to make it a habit or start?
Well, by no means am I'm expert. We're just kind of wrapping here,
Sure.
right? So people that are listening, like, again, this is ideas to take and you mix it up and do your own stuff, right? One of the things that I think about, because this is me too, because again, I've got lots of stuff that I can do.
Yeah.
There's a time where there's a hard deadline, like a legit hard deadline, and you don't have a choice. You got to suck it up. And so there's times where like I don't have a choice. I get less me time. I get less solo time, and I've got to get this thing done. And then I make sure I get more after it's done. Right, I'll kind of give myself a break afterwards. But there's times where you won't be able to do that. You got to run and gun. You just got to do what you got to do. But a lot of times people create like this unnecessary sort of stress on themselves about this thing has to be done, whatever. And then, and it doesn't get done on time or whatever. And then something like, for instance, this week where we had snow and stuff.
Yeah.
And you'll have things like that, or you get sick. and the work doesn't get done, and it's okay. It's like, oh, okay. So it's really not as important as you're making it out to be. It's important, of course, but the world's not going to end if you don't get it done right there. And that's happened to me several times where I've gotten sick or something got in the way. I'm like, oh, it's not as actually time sensitive as I was making it out to be. Sometimes there are time sensitive things and you got to get those things done. But I think a lot of times people just put this weight on themselves, this burden that they got to get this thing done. And if they don't, they're being slovenly and they're not being productive and all this stuff. And it's ridiculous. And you just got to take a step back, because to me, it just goes back to like jiu-jitsu, right? If you roll with this urgency and this nervousness, like urgency's good, but it's not good when you combine it with like nervousness, where you're afraid of like, oh, what if I don't get this thing done, or what if I don't hit this move, or what if, right? That kind of stuff. You end up screwing up. I mean, your movements are not good. This is why people that are afraid to lose, they do terribly, because they can't open up. They can't really go for anything, because if you're afraid to lose, if you're scared of failing or whatever, then you're just screwed right there. And so when you combine that urgency with negative emotion, I don't think it's a good thing all the time. And so I think it's the same kind of idea. At least for me, this is the way that I look at it. Whereas if you chase after something, you're like, I want to get this, I want to make this happen, whatever, or we're going to get this done. I'm going to go after this. That's a different mindset. And so I think it's the same thing, right? Like, because that's the mindset that I have if I compete, and I've competed so much better with that mindset, where I'm like, I want to go after this. I want to do this. So I think for the same thing with people, a lot of times people, they have this urgency, but it's combined with these negative emotions and everything else. And I think that if you were to take a step back and realize, like, life will go on if you don't get that thing done. So if you want to get it done, but go after it with like a certain sense of like, let's do it, not I have to do this thing, that kind of thing. It may not make sense, but that's the way that I look at it.
It's framing it a different way, and that can be hard, man.
Aggressive versus frantic, right? When people are frantic and they're freaking out and whatever, nothing good happens, right? But when you're aggressive towards getting something done, that's a different situation. So that's the way that I see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you get out of a frantic state? What do you do?
Take a step back. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have to check yourself. And this is where self-reflection comes in, right? Why are you frantic? Ask yourself. I can't tell someone why they're frantic. I can't tell you how to get out of it.
How do you get out of it?
Huh?
How do you get out of it?
I take time off. I take time to myself. This is where solo vacations came from, right? Like in 2017, I freaking felt like I was burning the candle at both ends. I was sleeping, 5 hours a night, maybe 6 hours. I was training all the time. I was doing the videos. Literally, I would leave the house sometimes on a busy day at like 5 in the morning. I'd get back at 11, right? Like, I'm never home. And there was a point where I'm like, I don't like this. I feel like I've become a slave to my work. I feel like I was doing this thing I enjoyed, and then so I got away from it. I basically just went down to Florida for a week, laid out on the beach, didn't talk to anybody, was just reflecting on where I was and like what I wanted things to look like. And I think that's honestly that's honestly something that could be useful too, as a change of place, change of scenery. Basically, because you get in the eye of the storm. Right, so you're there, and everything around you just it can become chaotic. Taking a step back, going like it doesn't have to be a long trip, but just getting away from your normal routine, your normal place, and then sitting back and looking at it and thinking, okay, what's going on? I think that I think that reflection's hard for most people, or at least not for most people, but for some people, because people don't like to sit in their own heads. They don't like to sit there. Like, you watch people, for instance. Like, I'll go to like a coffee shop. It's not so much like this now because people don't sit in line very much, right? But I remember like when you go to a place that has a line or has had a line, watch people. They'll sit there for 2 seconds, and then they're like, oh God, I got to fudge around on my phone, right? You'll see them scrolling aimlessly. They're not even looking at anything. They're just like on Facebook swiping, and they're not doing anything. They're just like, I can't sit here for more than 10 seconds in my own head. You're like, that's a problem. So you can't even hear what your own internal dialogue's telling you. So even if you had an answer to sort of overcome your problems, you're not even going to hear the damn thing if it's talking, right? So like, how can you hear what like the answer? Because the answers are already in you. You just got to listen up. They're there. You got to search for them sometimes. And I think that's where like finding some time by yourself, getting away from all your stuff, put your phone down, like just chill, be relaxed, and just listen to what comes up. I mean, I swear, all of my best ideas have always come from those situations. Every one of them. Anything like the gym came from that situation. Like me becoming full-time in the gym came from me driving around in the evening, just wandering in thought, thinking, right? Not from me like, all right, I'm going to plan it. I'm going to do this thing. No. I was just wandering in thought and it was like, boom, I got hit. Now, once I got hit by the thing, I got to work, right? The YouTube video thing, like that started off from a friggin' idea, right? I was like, yeah, that would be neat, whatever. Doing the YouTube, doing the podcast stuff with you. That started off as an idea. Like that was happened when I was just wandering around going for a walk one day on a Sunday. I was like, oh, that would probably work, right? I mean, there's a ton of different things. Even some of the stuff that I do that's not related to the jiu-jitsu that I'm happy with, whatever, came from ideas that were just happened when I was relaxed. Because when you're relaxed, things can come up to the surface. When you're freaking out and stressed out or whatever, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think having good people around you too is important. I think I remember. There was soon after this time, I think you went on vacation. I remember seeing you one day at the gym, like you just look like worn out. There's something like, because you're usually this kind of jovial dude. You always talk about bounce around, right?
Yeah.
You weren't bouncy. You seemed flat.
I probably was.
Like, and just your face looked like it just looked different. Like you didn't look like you had the same joy in you. And I think I remember asking, like, "Hey man, is everything all right?" And you're like, yeah, kind of thing. You can't get into any kind of crazy details, but I think soon after that you went. But I remember like we'd be there at the gym, and then you're like, I'm filming. We'd be leaving. We would bullshit. We'd train hard. It'd be like 8:30, 8:45, and like you'd be getting a meal in, getting ready. He's like, oh, we're getting ready to film, and it would like be like this all the time for a while. I remember it. But it's interesting though. But I think like having people around you, possibly that are supportive or that can see that maybe if you're starting to get to that end of your line there, you're starting to get to the point where you're pretty fatigued and because you can see maybe you're not producing the same quality of work or just not the same joy or the same kind of excitement for what you're doing.
Yeah, so. I mean, and that's right. And even the people, and this is where the questioning part comes in, like when you start like sitting back and thinking about like, why am I this way, or why do I feel frantic? Why do I feel stressed out? Whatever. What are these questions? And ask yourself. I mean, it's a, like you go back to journaling, like I journal, and a lot of times my journals start off with a question to myself. Yeah. Like, why do I feel like this? Like, so here's an example. The other day, I was grumpy. I was so grumpy the other day, and I don't know why. I was grumpy Wednesday when I had a massage here. I left, and I was grumpy afterwards. I don't know why I was so grumpy like later on that day.
We had a conversation that day. It seemed like
I was fine then. It was like later on I got struck by grumpiness, and I don't know why I was so grumpy. And I remember I was sitting there with Jess, and we were watching a show together, like whatever, and having dinner. And I told her, because she could tell. I said, "Hey, baby, I love you. I'm just grumpy today." Because I'm like, it's not you. I'm just grumpy. Yeah. Because I'm aware enough that I know when I'm grumpy and when something bothers me from someone, right? And it's just like it has nothing to do with her. I'm just grumpy. But then I started like, okay, why am I grumpy? So the next morning I got up and did my meditation. All right, let's journal. Why was I grumpy last night? And going through it, and I realized that there was a few things like I always have goals set, and I didn't have a couple goals set, and so like so there were areas where my work is fueled by goals. And if I don't have a goal set, I feel like aimless, and I don't like feeling aimless. So I was like, oh, okay, that's what it was. So I didn't have a goal set for this particular area of my life that I normally have one for. Let's set one. Because I already hit that goal. So now I got to do a new goal, right? So all right, so I hit this goal, which is a good thing. I got to set a new one, right? And so that was something where, and that came about as a mind dump, where I just started writing down, and then before I know it, like it popped out like you didn't have a goal set. Oh shit, there it is. Like it's just like you just have this you allow things to come up. And again, maybe that takes time for people to get used to, but again, it's a useful practice. And just again, you don't necessarily have to journal. Sometimes you can just go for a long walk and just like being in your own head for a little bit. But just allowing that time there to just sort of chew on whatever's been going on in your life, to reflect on what's going on. It's super, super important. And I feel like, again, it's just something that's not valued. It's something that people don't try to do. It's stuff that people don't make time for. People make time for their training. They make time for this, that, whatever. They don't make time for, I'm just going to hang out and be by myself. I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for like a 2-hour walk. Right, just so I can just enjoy some nature and be alone. Yeah, right. People don't really. I mean, some people do, of course, but a lot of people don't make time for that because it doesn't seem like, well, where's the productive?
It doesn't seem productive.
Where's the productivity in that? But the thing is when I do that. So here's the thing that I figured out for myself: And everybody's different, so you got to figure out. It's just like diets. There is no one diet.
Sure.
If there was, then we would just have the diet, right? The diet, but it doesn't exist. You got to figure out which one works for you. What I figured out, at least for me, is when I give myself that time, one, I'm way more productive. I can squeeze in more in 4 hours than most people do in like, you know, their 8-hour shifts because I'm so damn focused and I'm excited about it. That's another thing. Like I don't feel like I'm being worked by a taskmaster, right? I don't feel like the one side of my brain is like pushing me and like saying, you got to do this because you're not being productive. I'm excited because I'm like, all right, I'm doing this and I get a chance to do this. I'm excited because I give myself something. Because like when I give myself something, almost like, hey, here, wake up in the morning, here's your time to yourself, whatever. Great, now let's go get some work done. Let's go get after it, right? When I'm with my students in the gym, I'm happy to be there and I'm very present with them. When I was being pulled every which direction, I wasn't present. I was just I was there, but I wasn't there, you know? And even conversations with people, you know, if I'm not allowing myself to basically turn off, hey, look, I'm done with this. Now, Jess will tell you, like, I will work because I enjoy my work. I'll work myself too much sometimes just because I have fun doing it and it's joy for me. So I'll do too much sometimes. But she'll also tell you when I'm done with work, I'm done. Like I go to sleep. I don't think about it. Like, you know, if there's a couple emails that I've got to get to, I'll get them to tomorrow. It'll be all right. Like, ain't gonna hurt you. It's not gonna hurt anything, you know?
It's a great point because I have a hard time like shutting it off. I feel like I'll constantly like pick away at stuff. Like I'll continue to work even like, okay, I think I'm done. I spent enough time doing this thing and I'm at a stopping point. I'll still get a pull to be like, I can do a little more. I can get a little more done. Yeah. So that's one of those things for me that's difficult. So having like,
you can't compartmentalize.
Yeah, but also having a different environment. Like, hey, this is my workspace here right now. I'm in my space to work. When I leave this space, I'm done working. Yeah. So that's important.
Space is important.
Well, the one thing I wrote down is like, when you don't feel joy, like say like you love doing something and then you don't feel like the same excitement or joy during it, then you know you're like, all right, something's up here. Because now I'm like, oh God, I got to do this other thing again. And before that was something you enjoyed doing. So now it's not something you feel like kind of pulled or forced to do it. That's kind of thing where you can be like, all right, I got to reassess or reevaluate this situation.
You got to change what you're doing. Because I mean, that's happened to me before. Like with everything that I've done.
Yeah, you said with training, with jiu-jitsu, with just like running the business, doing all that stuff together. It just wasn't the right combination or it was just too much.
Right, and so that's where one of the big things I started doing was delegating to people.
Yeah.
Work. Here, you come help me with this, you get this, and because I just can't do it.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, and that's another thing, man, these martial artists, right? Like we're so focused on ourselves.
Can do it all by ourselves.
Right. Too. And so it's a terrible mindset for business, you know, because like you can't do it all by yourself and because you don't have the skills to. And also you have to, and this is one thing too, just this, I mean, I guess this podcast is turning into almost like it's all over the place, but if you are going to run a business, you've got to be really keen on appreciating what other people bring to the table and the fact that they're not going to necessarily be you. Right. So for instance, like, people that work with me. So there's examples where I'm more of a bigger, like, so here's a great analogy. So I'm more of a bigger picture person.
Yeah.
Many of the people that I work with are very detailed. Okay. If I go through and I see a misspelling, I don't even notice it because I'm looking at the bigger picture of what the story is, right? They, on the other hand, are more detailed. So they'll see that misspelling and it will drive them bananas.
We talked about this.
Right.
Yeah.
They can't even get past that spelling because they're like, I got to change it, right? Whereas me, I don't even notice it. But those people are useful because those are the people that, like, again, you need those detailed people to comb through things.
Yeah.
Right? But you also need the people with the bigger picture to put it together. But, you know, that's an example where people are going to be different than you and you got to be able to appreciate that. And that's difficult sometimes, like again, and that takes reflection. You got to like, because you got to think about like, where am I messed up? Like, where am I screwed up? Where are my faults? And you got to be able to look at those because a lot of people don't look at their faults, right? Like it's the reason why you see it on social media all the time. People love to like wag the finger at someone else, and they'll love and everybody's got this. Everybody's got like a friend who's like life's in shambles, but they want to tell other people what to do, right? Or it's like it's your friend that weighs like 400 pounds and they want to tell you what to do to lose weight. You're like, oh yeah. Tell me about that, you know, like, you know, or your buddy who's never run a business is like, hey, here's what you need to do. Like, all right, get out of here. You know, like, again, people that have, it's like, it's very easy to tell people what to do rather than like, hey, why don't you do that? Like, why don't you do that stuff that you're talking about? Like, why don't you look at yourself and say, how are you screwed up? So you see it all the time with people online where it's very easy to wag the finger at people and like tell them like why they're terrible and this, that, whatever. But you're like, we're all screwed up. So how are you screwed up? Like, what are you projecting on that person from you? You know, and again, I think that comes with self-reflection. Like before, because I have a hell of a time ever criticizing people with stuff, because if I even, which is why people won't ever see me do it, because the few times I maybe would throw out something critical, my inner dialogue's then going, well, hey, how are you screwed up? Like, didn't you do this once? Oh, I did do it, didn't I? Well, who the hell am I to talk about it, right? Like, it's stuff like that. So, and I think that's important. I think you're a much healthier, more intelligent, more aware person, and you're more useful to everyone around you when you have that time to reflect and sort of know where you are and everything.
Yeah, that solitude. Yeah. I mean, no, that makes sense. And the thing about social media is you can curate exactly what you want people to see. Right, you can blend it. You can show exactly what you want. I can make this story about me that just shows these things about me that I want people to see.
Yeah,
and so it's easy to be like, to look at like this person that's got a perfect life when everything's falling apart. You know what I mean?
Well, nobody's perfect, and I mean even
nobody's perfect. But I'm just saying, you can give the illusion of that everything's going the way that you want it to go. That like, oh, I did this thing. Look what I'm doing. And
but even that, right? Like. So sure, that, like for instance, someone might be driving some expensive car or something, because that's what like everybody.
Sure,
likes.
That's a great example.
That's what everybody likes. Like you see all the people that are like flexing the car that they're driving next to, right? And they take some picture, like, look at what I'm driving. Again, another important thing about self-reflection: time to yourself. You can figure out what's important to you. Do you give two shits about a car, really? Or is it the society around you that tells you you're supposed to care about a car, right? Like, what is it? Like, I don't care about a car. I give two shits about a car. Means nothing to me. It's a vehicle that can get me to and from a place. That's about it. Like, I don't care about it. It's just not something I'm very interested in. You know, or like, you know, you're supposed to go and get the largest, most expensive home possible so that you can, I guess, be house poor. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, again, it's one of those things where those are how you define, quote, success. Like,
yeah,
it can be, right? But again, and if you really want a big fat house, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm all for it. It just depends on, do you want it because you have a big family and you want to have a big yard for your kids to run in or whatever? Or is it something where you're being told that you're supposed to want that and you've never stopped and thought, like, do I actually want that? Because I know like when I was younger, I for whatever reason, I enjoyed my time to myself. That was something that always kind of went through my head when I'd be driving, like, I'd be pulled to, hey, I should be chasing after this stuff because I don't want to be a failure. But it's like, I don't want any of that stuff, you know. And I'm glad I followed my own sort of compass, because you know the life that I live is not very conventional, but I'm happy with it, right? And I think that everybody should be more attuned to, you know, figuring out what they actually want. Figuring out what's really important to them, not what everybody tells you you're supposed to think, right? Again, you've got a world around you that's trying to push beliefs and stuff on you, like it always has, right? The society, right? The what would Freud call it, the superego? You know, you have to figure out what you want, though. You know, because again, you don't want to spend your life chasing after stuff you don't actually want, right? What is that? What is that? The old saying where you spend your life chasing or climbing the ladder, and then by the end you get to the top and you realize it was the wrong one. You know, so like you don't want to do that. So again, and then you can get those answers from yourself when you go inward rather than outward. You know, and again, I mean, this is not something new. I mean, you have people from everyone from Seneca to Schopenhauer, these philosophers of old, right, that we talked about these ideas of solitude and getting away from everything and having time to yourself, you know. Again, it's just something I think it's important with a society. And again, it's hard to do it because you're around this, where you have to disconnect from your phone, because again, if you're by yourself swiping up on your phone, you're not really alone. You're still plugged in. You know, you gotta unplug a little bit.
Well, I think even for Jiu-Jitsu, like, using it, people always ask about journals, or should you journal, should you write? Not really about, I think that you can get more benefit from not really writing about like technique specifically, but more like your experience, how you felt, what you felt like was going well, why, you know, and reflecting that way. What do you think you did? These are my goals. This is what I want to accomplish. I want to get this sweep. Did I get it? Why not? Doing those type of things, reflecting in that way. And that's also a good way, like, because people will ask you, Chewy, how do I get better at jiu-jitsu? Well, You need to reflect, and you need to figure out like what you're doing. Think about what's working for you, and then you have a better idea on how to move forward. So for me personally, that's kind of what I've done. And sometimes recording, filming myself and watching my tendencies and being like, I don't know, why am I doing this? I need to figure that. And so that's something I will do. That I found helpful was actually, you know, reflecting in that way, just taking notes on how things went. And I'll do that in my journal in general, just like a general journal, like, oh, jiu-jitsu's pissing me off right now, and this is why, you know, or things aren't going the way I want them to. So,
well, it's even like, I mean, you don't even have to journal for that necessarily. You could just like turn
on the ride home,
turn your radio down a little bit and just think, right? Just think. It's even like, who said that? Henry Ford. He was like, this is an old story, and it could be like somewhat myth or whatever, but they said that like they had all these people because he was said to be stupid. Everybody thought,
yeah,
right. And so he had all the phones around him, and then these people were like basically bombarding him with questions, right? And then he would just pick up the phone and put the phone down, pick up the phone to get the answer, put the phone back down. They're like, well, why don't you know these things? He's like, because I need time to do more important things. I'm like, what's more important? To think.
Yeah.
To like think about things, right? And I thought that was useful. Again, it could be somewhat mythological or myth.
It's a good analogy, though.
But it's important, right? But the idea, even in jiu-jitsu, like I've noticed this thing where like, because for me, like whenever I would like roll and I made a mistake, I would try to figure out what I was doing. You know, so I'd try to like figure out, did I leave my arm out there, or whatever. And so you're right. Like I try to tell people like, reflect when you leave the gym, like or when you get caught in something. Don't just let it be something where you get caught in the same move 6 times. Try to think about like, what are they doing to make that happen? But again, I think a lot of that stuff comes from inward rather than outward, and so I think that's the use or the sort of the utility of a little bit of solitude from time to time. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Hopefully, it gave you an idea to chew on. Again, if you want to support the podcast, you can go over to charlottesweb.com. You can use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu, save 15% on your order. You can go to epicrollbjj.com. Again, Jiu-Jitsu is the promo code, save 15% on your order. And again, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can go to the Jiu-Jitsu Patreon by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And again, you can check the different tiers that we have there. And if you'd like to see what's going on with the inner workings of my brain and all the events and stuff that I have going on, you can go to jiu-jitsu.net. You can join the Chew Crew newsletter. If you go there, you'll see a thing that says free ebook. Click that and just follow the details there. You'll get a free resource for your jiu-jitsu training, as well as getting my daily email, which you can unsubscribe from at any point should you not like it. And guys, with that said, we'll talk to you next week.